We begin the day with the white at the end of the tunnel, the White House. The final week of the U.S. presidential campaign has arrived and the polling numbers are tightening. The comfortable lead enjoyed by Democrat Hillary Clinton slipping away following the FBI's new investigation into her emails. Now, we still have no idea what is inside those emails. We don't know who wrote them. We don't know who sent them. But that is not stopping Donald Trump from using the news to hammer hard against Clinton's character. Trump now using many of the criticisms aimed at him in connection with allegations that he sexually assaulted women. The polls, of course, tend to tighten as Election Day approaches. In this campaign, you can expect the attacks to sting even more with every passing day. As the clock winds down to Election Day, we begin our special coverage of a campaign unlike any that we've ever seen. All this week, we'll be talking with people connected to the candidates, and we'll be taking a final look at the poll numbers and the campaign issues. Tonight, we travel to a place in America where you will most likely find one of those angry voters. Correspondent Richard Walker went to the small coal mining town of Phelps in the state of Kentucky. Now, that's the heartland of conservative America. Phelps is home to around 1,000 people, and most of them are Trump supporters. But Democrats are campaigning hard there as well, hoping to change some opinions before it's time for the ballot box. We want to pull in Richard Walker now. He joins us from Washington. Good evening to you, Richard. Your story that we're going to see is going to show, we assume, that positions in America can seem so far apart, you have to wonder, can people ever find common ground?
Yeah, it is extraordinary. I mean, as we'll see in the report just now, just within the space of this tiny village in eastern Kentucky, you have profoundly different views of what kind of America people want in the future. Now, we wanted to go, this was at the end of our 5-week-long road trip across America, we wanted to go to one of the places that is most strongly supporting Donald Trump in the entire country. And we found for that purpose this mining community in eastern Kentucky that has seen massive economic decline, it particularly accelerating in the last 8 years under Barack Obama. But we also found 1 or 2 people who are supporting Hillary Clinton despite what they see as a war on coal by the Democrats. Let's take a look at our report. We're on the campaign trail in eastern Kentucky. Republican Norma Kirk McCormick is running for state legislature, hoping that strong local support for Donald Trump will help her get elected too.
Got to get them out of there. Got to get rid of the Democrats, put the Republicans in. Let's see what they can do. It can't get any worse. As Trump says, what the hell have you got to lose?
Eastern Kentucky was once one of the biggest coal mining regions in the world. Now just a few mines and a few jobs remain. A combination of global market forces and environmental regulations have caused the collapse in output. Locals call it a war on coal, waged by Barack Obama and Hillary Clinton. Donald Trump is promising to end that war, and that's helped make him a hero for people like Charles Sanders. He spent his career supplying equipment to local mines. He says the whole political class has let the region down, and it's time for an outsider.
I'm sick and tired of them playing with our lives over politics. I'm sick of the corruption. And Donald Trump don't need the money. He's a billionaire. You can believe him when he says he wants to help the people, because if anybody ever had a reason for helping the people, it's Donald Trump.
Other parts of Trump's message resonate here too. The wars of the Middle East may feel far away, but the fears Trump has stoked about refugees are ever present.
What you got is you got Muslim terrorists that's coming in here. Their laws themselves says they got to kill Christians. Well, they put them in cages and drown them, burn them, cut off their heads. And we want to let them come over here without being vetted, without making sure them kind don't come.
But not everyone here is so in tune with Donald Trump's thinking. Charlene Hensley is a teacher at the local elementary school, and she's openly supporting Hillary Clinton. That makes her a lonely voice in this community, but she says others quietly agree.
I get messages from mothers of children that I've taught that say, I agree with you, but my husband would be furious if he knew. I can't help but think that that's part of the culture and that's part of the draw that Donald Trump has here, is that he's the man of the house and he can do pretty much what he says or wants to do. And Hillary is a danger because she represents a choice that these women have.
Gender roles are deeply embedded in these isolated hills and valleys, and Charlene has spent her life challenging them. She herself was the first girl in her family to graduate from high school. Now she fears what a Trump presidency could mean for her young students.
I want one of my girls to be one of the first people to walk on Mars. I want them to be, but if they decide to be here and be sitting in a living room with their children watching the first woman walk on Mars, that's fine too. I just want them to be satisfied with it. I want it to be their choice and nobody else's. And I certainly don't want somebody like Donald Trump messing with their self-esteem.
Charles takes us to an old abandoned mine where he worked back in the 1970s. He's as worried as Charlene about the future, but his fears center on Clinton rather than Trump.
By the time Hillary Clinton leaves office in 8 years, this country will be so far damaged, taxes will be so high, we're in a mess. If the people don't wake up in these last 2 weeks, we're doomed.
With Election Day getting closer yet, feelings are now running that high. As we leave Kentucky, we wonder how America can get back from this brink after Election Day. And yeah, I mean, I think this is going to be a profound problem for America, whoever wins this election. And we saw Charles and Charlene there, and I think they reflect the views of an awful lot of voters in this very, very profoundly polarized country, each side thinking that America is kind of doomed if the other side wins. Back to you, Brent.
All right, Richard, thank you very much. Stand by there. We want to open up the conversation now. I'm joined here in the studio by Professor Markus Kienchef. He is with the JFK Institute at the Free University here in Berlin. And to his right is a familiar face here on DW, Daniel Gerlach, our Middle East analyst and editor of the magazine Zenith. Daniel, let me ask you, you just returned from the U.S. What we saw in that story, the role of the Middle East, the Arab world, Muslims, it's huge, even in places like Kentucky. What about the accuracy of the picture that voters have in their minds about this issue?
Well, I'm not an expert on the average voter in the United States. What I'm in touch with is the foreign policy community and people that are actually dealing with the Middle East and with international relations for a living. And I see a high degree of frustration there, almost a feeling of collective humiliation that America is weak and that America is no longer defending the free world in the Middle East and that America has somehow withdrawn from the Middle East and created a huge vacuum there. I looked into surprised faces when I made the argument that probably Obama's Middle East policy with regard to these people we just listened to was a very smart one because he knew that there was nothing to gain for him in Syria. There was nothing to gain for him in Iraq. And I'd say, like, for the average American who is not so much involved with the Middle East, for whom terrorism or Islam as a whole is more like an abstract issue to talk about than something they know from real life, for them, the Obama policy on the Middle East was quite a good thing.
But you understand that, and you're saying even insiders in the United States are frustrated that they don't see it. And Daniel, we can't expect voters then to understand if the Obama administration is looking at the Middle East with the long game approach. That certainly it hasn't been communicated to the voters. I mean, don't we have a huge disconnect with voters and with what's actually happening in terms of policy?
Oh, absolutely. I definitely agree. And I think what's to blame is populist rhetoric, and especially Trump's attempt to use that rhetoric in order to mobilize voters.
But why don't think, but okay, that's one point. But then when you have, factual criticisms that are launched against either of the candidates, it doesn't seem to stick. I mean, if you look at the poll numbers right now, it's almost, neck and neck again.
Well, some people said that we've entered a phase of post-truth politics, where truth doesn't matter anymore. So if you kind of repeat, say, a blatant, lie or untruth, as it were, often enough, then you make it stick, and you make it really difficult for people to refute that and to kind of put up facts.
Well, that leads to the frustration you were talking about, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, the frustration is certainly among the professionals. And here I could also observe a very strange cohesion of interest, let's say, or converging interest. Even among people, the professional foreign policy people who are not Republicans, there is a certain inclination to like Trump because, frankly, they think there's much more business to do. Because Trump doesn't have a foreign policy at all. He has just like some very inconsistent ideas. He wants to bomb Iran, but he wants to be friends with Russia. He wants to make America strong and defend American interests in the Middle East without saying what these interests are. But among these people in Washington, D.C. in particular, you could see that they say there's much more work for us to do because Clinton is surrounded by armies of foreign policy advisors. And even though there are so many people talking about foreign policy and so many professionals in design making this foreign policy, they will probably get a bit like more of what they have already gotten under Obama. And this is their fear.
All right, let's talk a little bit, before we run out of time, I want to talk about the money that's being spent on this campaign. And Clinton is outspending Trump everywhere but Ohio. I mean, if you look at Florida, Nevada, North Carolina, Pennsylvania, you know, she's definitely spending the most money. Donald Trump has exceeded her, though, when it comes to political ads on television. But today it is the new Clinton ad against Trump that is debuting and getting a lot of talk. Take a look.
Putting a wife to work is a very dangerous thing. When I come home and dinner's not ready, I go through the roof. Grab him by the and when you're a star, they let you do it. You can do anything.
More accusers coming forward to say they were sexually assaulted by Donald Trump.
I'll go backstage before a show.
Yes.
And everyone's getting dressed.
Donald Trump walked into the dressing room while contestants, some as young as 15, were changing.
Yeah. Standing there with no clothes. You see these incredible looking women.
I'd look her right in that fat, ugly face of hers.
She ate like a pig.
A person who's flat-chested is very hard to be a 10.
So you treat women with respect?
I can't say that either.
All right, good.
All right, so that's the ad playing. Richard, it gets back. When you look at that ad, it still begs the question, is it going to stick? Is it going to change anyone's mind? You've been traveling across the U.S. We'll let you have the last word. Why are arguments not sticking?
Well, I think an ad like this is not necessarily about changing people's minds, Brent. It's more about making sure that Hillary Clinton supporters actually come out and vote. And I think this is potentially, some of the collateral damage of the last few days for Hillary Clinton will be that her own supporters get demoralized by these latest stories about her emails and feel that they're losing faith in her. I think this is the kind of ad that is meant to remind them exactly why they're voting against Donald Trump. But the arguments on both sides are really profoundly negative. I mean, thinking back to our report there, what Charlene sees in Donald Trump and what Charles sees in Hillary Clinton is primarily great threats to their own vision of what kind of an America that they want to live in.
All right. Richard Walker, thank you very much. We'll be talking with you throughout the week as we approach Election Day. And to Marcus Kienchef with the JFK Institute, thank you very much for being on the show.
Thanks for having me.
Daniel, stick around. We're going to be back with you in just a moment.